And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I am talking today with Amy Delman. Amy, thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
Oh, you are welcome. This is going to be a really fun, vibrant conversation. Amy and I met a few weeks ago and just really struck up a great friendship and a great business relationship. Amy's an expert at using media exposure to raise the awareness and increase revenues for her clients and their companies. And Amy, I am excited to dive in. So as we get started, tell us, how in the world did you get to doing what you're doing today?
Interesting question. When I graduated college, public relations wasn't even an industry. So I was an English major. I went to a Career Blazes. They matched me up with Joseph E. Seagram and Sons. At that time, a very large Fortune 100 wine company. They had a management training program. You get to be trained for 6 months, and then you have 6 months to find a department that wants you. And I floated, and I wound up in their corporate philanthropy department. And you were never supposed to tell anybody that you wanted. It had to be a true match. And I loved it. That was the beginning of public relations. It was called corporate philanthropy at Seagram's. It was called, Good Neighbor Awards at other companies. I was in the ladies' room, and the senior woman walked in who I'd never spoke to. And as I was washing my hands, I pretended I was talking to somebody else that was in the ladies' room who wasn't there, but I pretended it's a huge ladies' room. And I said, "Oh my God, I love this. I love this place, this department. I hope they pick me." And as I was walking out, she said, "What's your name?" And I got picked, and I was there 5 years. And that really was my introduction to what has become public relations. It's doing well by doing good. And that really is what PR is. So that's how my first introduction, and I floated, I worked for several companies in-house as a corporate soldier. And I did marketing, and under the marketing umbrella, I was always able to squeeze in my PR, getting interviews for the president, getting interviews for the firm leadership, having them in newspapers, on television, on the radio, and slowly but surely we began to see a connect between the more awareness that was generated, the more media reached out to them, the more media that reached out to a company, the more well-known they became.
Yeah. It's shocking, isn't it, how that works? Because here's what happens, I think, in marketing. Yes. We reach out and try to convince people to have a conversation with us, versus when somebody refers a client to you or a prospect to you and they come to you, it's a totally different conversation. It's an easier sale. It's a better client. I'm assuming that's very similar to what you're talking about is when you do PR, public relations, media relations properly, there comes a point in time, a tipping point per se, where the media starts understanding and recognizing you're an expert, you're a thought leader. We would like to interview you. They start coming to you. I assume it's a lot easier than chasing them all the time. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Public relations is a door opener. It's a door opener for my clients, because when they see you on one show, more times than not, competitive shows or newspapers, or podcasts, they want to have you on their show too. It's a question of getting that first show.
Right.
For me, public relations is when I do podcasts like this, or I get quoted in newspapers. That makes companies that didn't know what public relations is or why they would need it, kind of educates them. And when they come to me, that's usually a slam dunk. I do prospect. It's a full cycle. Sure. And when I prospect, it's a lot harder to get them to understand. But the companies that I work with are generally companies that want to grow.
Yeah.
And that's what I do.
Well, and it's, so we're going to talk about 2 or 3 things. Remind me to come back to the revenue. The revenue, because you already have relationships with media companies who trust you. And so if you get a new client, if somebody listening to this reaches out to you, I don't know how many times more likely it is that they're going to get exposure that, right? Talk about that for a minute.
Okay, so I work very, very diligently on keeping up to date with the media. I use several different paid databases that I buy to chase reporters from point A to point B to point C. I'll give you a funny example. I have a 20-year relationship with a radio host who was at a radio station, and then he said to me, I'm retiring. Didn't hear from him for a few years. One day, one of my consultants that worked for me was doing a media search, and she said, did you know this name? I've seen him in your list. And I said, yes, but he retired. She goes, he's at this radio station now. So I emailed him and I said, is this you? So why didn't you tell me where you were going? And he said, yes, it's me. And I was just waiting for you to find me. So really, and he had 3 of my clients at different times. But so keeping relevant, I have 2 sets of clients. I have my retained clients that pay me, and I have my media contacts that are really my clients. I work to serve them. In turn, when they have a need, they come to me. I have the type of relationships now where I have told them often enough, even if I don't have a client for this particular need that you have, I will do my best to find another PR person that has the right client for you. It builds trust, it builds the relationship. And that's really how I've built up my stable of really long-term media contacts.
Yeah, which is huge as you're listening to this, because she can get you featured in different things. She has the relationships, and just like in business, I'm sure that all of those contacts, it's a who do you know type thing, that if you're trying to get somebody in the Wall Street Journal, let's say, or whatever, they know somebody down the road at the Tecumseh Times that you could get somebody in or whatever. And so the other thing I want to talk about, and tell me if this is true. Let's say you get somebody featured in a newspaper, and this could be a local newspaper. It could be a regional. It doesn't have to be Wall Street Journal, right? It doesn't have to be that, because the media is the media. Now, after that runs, could a business owner get a copy of that and use it in like a welcome and wow kit that they would send out or on their website? How does that work?
Okay, so I have gotten clients in the Wall Street Journal. I do have a relationship with the reporter. I want to just clarify something. I have these great relationships, and I can pitch the new client that comes to me, but I cannot guarantee that the reporter will have that need at that time. Right. All I can do is guarantee that reporter will be made aware of that new client for when a need does arrive.
Right.
Now, when my clients are on any outlet, we get a clip, whether it's digital, print, audio, visual, we get a clip, we put it up on their website so that their clients can see.
Yes.
Then we write a press release, and that gets placed all over social media. Then the client sends an email. We usually call it ICYMI, in case you missed it. So-and-so company was just featured, on Expert Speak.
Yeah.
So that their clients, prospective clients, and referral sources see that.
Yeah. All right. Great. Pause there, because I want my audience to understand. Too many times it's, oh, look, they were featured in the newspaper or on a podcast or something, and we forget about it. It's like, no, that's a great stand up on the podium. Great. But it's the long tail marketing that you just talked about that stays on your website. It's sent out to your prospects over time. It's on social media. It's in email. You take this and you leverage that one appearance multiple times. Now that one appearance leads to a second, a third, a fourth, and pretty soon on your website you have media appearances, and they go to that page and there's dozens of podcasts, interviews, press releases, things. And when your prospect sees that, in their mind they go, wow, this person must have something to say because the media is picking them up. It's that good housekeeping seal of approval, right? The media stamps that on you. That's part of what you do to help business owners build that the credibility, but also the revenue when it all starts coming together. Is that how that works?
That is correct. First of all, first of all my clients are commodities. I represent professional services firms, accounting, engineering, law. So what separates my client from the client across the company that does the same thing down the road is the media exposure. When they're Googling and they want to look up somebody new to hire to use them or represent them, and they see that this firm has all these media bites that they can actually read and listen to and hear, as opposed to a company that doesn't have as many or doesn't have any. Who are you going to choose? 90% of the time, unless they know somebody at the other firm, they will call the client, the company that has the media exposure. It's a third-party endorsement. It is the gold standard of approval, and it's not advertising. It's flip side. Advertising is what you pay for. Publicity is what you pray for. And that is, I am not the author of that. I don't know who it is. I learned that 30 years ago. And
well, and it's funny because I've been told this for years that like in newspapers or magazines, it doesn't matter. People read the articles. They might see the ads. And the best ads I've ever seen in print look like articles. Because that's what people, so when you're featured in a newspaper, a magazine, or whatever, it's higher quality because you're being interviewed, but it's an article, and just that adds more credibility and value of who you are. Why in the world would they be interviewing you?
Well, first of all, that's what we're talking about here are two things. We're talking about the importance of earned media over advertorial space. Earned media is that third-party endorsement. Earned media is what I'm doing now.
Yes.
I'm not paying you to have me on your show.
What?
The show. I didn't pay for it.
That's right. Okay, that's enough of that interview. No.
And advertorial is when you buy advertising space, and then you control it like an ad. You have an article published. And you could be quoted saying all the things that you want to say, and nobody's going to change it because you paid for it.
That's right.
So I'm not saying that advertising is bad. If you have a large enough budget, the two work together beautifully, public relations and advertising. But if you have a smaller budget and you're looking for that spoke in the marketing umbrella that's going to bring you that third-party endorsement, that credibility, it's going to be public relations.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's unpack the professional services firms and things, whether it's a CPA or a law firm or whatever. Let's just take an estate planning attorney, right? That's a crazy professional services firm. How could they engage with you and benefit from this? And let's say they're in, I'm just going to pick Omaha, Nebraska. I don't know. And they want to serve people in the Nebraska area. And when they come to you, what's your process? What's your mindset go? How do you just begin working with them to help? It's just fascinating to me to think through this.
Okay, so the first step is when I get approached by a prospective client, we set up time to have an hour information gathering meeting, free of charge. And that is when I interview them and I find out what is their kernel or nugget that separates them. Because, though they might do the same thing, estate planning, as the next company, they're different people. So they're going to do it differently.
Yep.
I look to see if they have past media exposure. If they do, that's great. No matter how old it is, it's a platform to build on. If they don't, we're going to create it. We're going to create it first locally and then regionally and then nationally. It is a process. So first we interview them. Then we hear about their goals, what they want to achieve, who are they looking to attract, who's their ideal customer, what markets do they want to have hire them? Because we're going to market, do the PR very strategically, chambers of commerce, trade magazines, places where their customers would be, so that they get seen. Then after we do all that, then they hire me. And then after that, we do templates, we do a pitch, which is, it's an introduction to the media that this new company now has representation and can speak about. And we picked like 3 or 4 key talking points.
Yeah.
And we send that out. It's an introductory. And then we do, so let's say the Nebraska Times calls me and says, oh, I read, I got your email and I'm interested in speaking to Dan Smith of, this firm. Can you set up an interview? That's what we do. We get, we go to the client, this company wants to interview, this paper wants to interview you. Let me get you, let's get some times. We do everything. We get the interview set up. The interview happens. The article is printed or the radio show is broadcasted. We get the clip. We write a press release. A press release, we already have a template of the press release from the early stages. We write it, the client approves it. It's sent out, it's posted on their website, it's sent out to their clients, and this is the process that repeats and repeats and repeats.
And here's what I want to unpack just a bit of that, which is a beautiful process, by the way. Love that. The pitch.
Yes.
And here's what business owners really need to understand. And correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, because I'm stepping outside of my zone of genius, but I think I'm right. The pitch that you make to the media is different from the pitch you're making to your prospects, because the media, you referred to it earlier, they have a need for their audience.
Yes.
And so talk a little bit more about the pitch and how do you structure that for the media's perspective so they go, that's what I want.
Okay, so we generate, I have these databases, and when I work with a new client, we make a media list of all of the outlets that we're going to be pitching: print, digital, broadcast, and we look to see what articles has the reporter written for the print and the digital, who are the guests for the different podcasts, what are they looking for? So each pitch is tailored to that show or paper's area of interest. So the pitch that I send to the Tennessee Times is different than I send to Good Morning Tennessee,
right?
Radio or television show. It's different. The kernel is the same, but the way it's presented, it's different. We take a past guest from the Good Morning Tennessee show, a past guest that maybe does something, maybe not exactly like the estate, but let's say they had a lawyer on that did matrimonial. We say, we saw recently you featured this matrimonial attorney, giving your readership or your listenership information on what to do if they're going through a divorce or family issue. Well, we have an estate planning attorney, and they would like to give your listenership audience what to do if they are going to be making a will, what steps they need to take. So that's how they approach it. They've already featured somebody very similar yet different, but those are people their audience wants to see.
Right. That's awesome. And this is just a biased question from me. Obviously we help business owners become authors, right? If somebody is an author, does that help any, or does that?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, that is definitely, it gets you in the door. All of the morning shows, they won't even look at you if you don't have a book.
Okay.
So that's number one. And it's a book shows that the person has put together a concise grouping of information that somebody can take and read and learn from. So that means they know the process of how to get the most pertinent information out. Why wouldn't radio shows, television shows, newspapers want to speak to them? Because they already have the work done. The information is right there. They just want to, they can now reach a larger audience, individual audiences with the same information, which is really wonderful for book authors who really go on book tours, or, they get these, they speak at several different chambers of commerce. I represented an accounting firm, not the same one, a different accounting firm. And when they hired me, they were very small, they were boutique, they were a medical evaluation accounting firm. Like, you can't get smaller than that.
Yeah.
And the managing partner, he met with me for like 30 seconds and he said, I have the starting of a manuscript. I want it to be peer published by Business Valuation Resources, who I never heard of. He said, you could do anything you else want for the other partners. That's what I want you to do for me. So I took his manuscript. We found the editor at Business Valuation Resources. We sent a synopsis to the editor. The editor loved it, liked it. They were moving along. The editor gets fired.
Oh, no.
Editor says, so then I call, like after they hire a new person, I call that person. She could not be, she is so uninterested in the topic. And so she says, no. I go back to the managing partner and I said, what else is peer reviewed? He said, no place else. That's where I wanted it.
Wow.
6 months later or 7 months later, I get a phone call from the original editor. He's now with John Wiley and Sons. And he said, I shared Eric's manuscript with the publisher and they want to publish it. So I went back to the manager and I said, it's not peer reviewed. He goes, it's John Wiley and Sons. Yes.
Yeah.
That allowed him to go to every CPA society around the country and speak.
Yeah.
And drive business. So much so that a large national accounting firm bought them out for a huge amount of money because of that book.
That's awesome. And because of your relationships that made it happen. So I want people to understand this. PR and media, it is a game all of its own, and it's not it is a game that takes years to build relationships of trust and relationships that come back to you just like that one did 6 months later. And that's the value that Amy brings to professional service providers. And real quick, hit some categories. If somebody's out there in the audience listening and they're like, is that me or not? Because a lot of us position ourselves as professional service providers, but who would not be a great client for you? How about that? Is there anybody out there running a company that would not be a good fit for you?
Somebody who does not want to grow. Public relations amplifies your message. If you hire a publicist, any publicist, be prepared to grow.
I love that. We're going to end right there. That is the title of this episode, Amplify Your Message, because that's exactly what Amy Delman helps you do. Amy, thank you for being here, but tell me, how do they get in touch with you? How do they find out more about you and all that you do and how you might be able to help them amplify their message and use media to really increase their credibility, but also drive profits? Where would they go?
They would go to amydelmanpr.com, or they can call me at 201-563-4614, or email amydelmanpr@verizon.net.
Awesome. I'm going to capture that in the show notes because some people might be out walking the dog or exercising or doing who knows what, maybe reading a magazine or maybe reading an article that somebody else got PR coverage and they're sitting there going, I wish I could do that. Well, now you can, because Amy Delman can help you really get the coverage that you need to elevate, bolster your credibility, communicate your message, amplify your message and your expertise, and drive more revenue. And she does like all the work. That's the best part, because she has the connections, the network, and she's been doing this for years. Amy, thank you. This has been so much fun to talk with you about this, because I don't talk PR very much at all. So it's been really, really interesting to me. Thank you for being my guest on Expert Speak.
It was my pleasure, Michael, and thank you for selecting me to do PR on your show.
You are welcome. You're the best, and I hope people reach out to you. Amy Delman, and I'm going to have her website and everything in the show notes, but it's amydelmanpr.com is where you can reach out to find her, have that conversation, and see how she can help you amplify your message. Thanks for listening to another great episode of Experts Speak.